was just supposed to be a normal camping trip with my friends. I wasn't usually into that kind of thing, but my best friend Jess had convinced me to go. She said it would be fun, and we'd make lots of great memories together before we all went off to college. The first couple of days were fine. We drove out to this campground a few hours from where we lived and set up our tents. There were 6 of us in total: me, Jess, her boyfriend Mike, and our other friends Alex, Sam, and Chris. We went on hikes, fished in the lake, made s'mores by the fire. You know, typical camping stuff. Honestly, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But things took a weird turn on the 3rd night. We were all sitting around the fire, joking and laughing like normal. That's when I noticed the woods around us had gone completely silent. Like, dead silent. No crickets chirping, no owls hooting, nothing. It was really eerie and put me on edge. I looked over at Jess and said, "Do you hear that?" "Hear what?" she asked. "Exactly. It's completely quiet all of a sudden." The others noticed it too once I pointed it out. We all stopped talking and just listened for a minute. You could have heard a pin drop in those woods. It was so still. Mike eventually broke the silence. "That's weird. Where did all the animals go?" We speculated something may have scared them off, but we couldn't think of what it could be. The fire wasn't that big and we didn't have music playing or anything. We tried to go back to our conversation, but the unnatural silence hanging over the woods kept distracting us, until Chris suddenly gasped and pointed towards the tree line. "What the hell is that?" I followed where he was pointing and felt my goosebumps immediately raise on my arms. There was a pale figure lurking behind one of the trees, mostly obscured by the shadows. I couldn't make out any distinct features, but I could tell it was very tall and gangly, and it was just standing there completely still watching us. The sight of this thing sent a primal spike of fear through me. Every instinct told me this figure meant us harm. We all jumped up, shouting at the thing to go away. But it didn't move. It just continued staring in our direction with unseen eyes, sizing us up. Mike grabbed a flashlight and shined it at the tree, trying to get a better look at the figure. But as soon as the light hit it, the thing retreated back into the woods, quicker than anything humanly possible. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. We stood there shaking, voices hushed. We knew none of us could sleep after seeing something like that. We decided to pack up our camp as quickly as possible and get the hell out of there. We worked feverishly, throwing everything haphazardly into Mike's SUV. As I was helping Jen roll up her tent, I heard the crack of a branch in the forest behind us. Spinning around, I scanned the tree line with my flashlight. The beam landed on the tall, shadowy figure standing between 2 trees deeper in the woods. It was just far enough that I couldn't make out any features, only a vague humanoid shape that was far too skinny and stretched. My friends saw it too, and we abandoned the rest of camp, not caring about leaving some stuff behind. We just wanted to get out of those woods. Mike drove us out of there like a bat out of hell, while the rest of us watched the woods flee past the windows. As we reached the park exit, I happened to glance back one more time. My stomach dropped when I saw the pale figure standing at the tree line, once again watching us leave. Except this time it wasn't alone. There were several more clustered behind it. Mike got us onto the main road and floored it. The whole drive home, all any of us could talk about was that freakish, pale figure and its companions. We knew they weren't normal campers or some stupid prank. They were something evil, and they wanted us to know we were being hunted. It's been 2 weeks since that camping trip, and I still can't get those pale, lurking figures out of my head. Something terrible dwells deep in those woods, and now that it has our scent, I fear it may follow us anywhere we go. I might never feel safe again. Camping has always been one of my favorite things to do. Getting away from cell phones and social media for a weekend, cooking over a campfire, sleeping in a tent under the stars. It's so peaceful and relaxing. Or at least it's supposed to be. My last camping trip turned out to be anything but relaxing. It started out normal enough. My buddy Jake and I drove up to the state park Friday afternoon right after school got out. We hiked around for a few hours, found the perfect campsite right next to the lake, got a fire going, and ate some hot dogs. The first night was awesome, telling ghost stories and laughing about school and life. I didn't want the weekend to end. On Saturday morning, we got up and went exploring around the lake. That's when things started getting a little strange. As we bushwhacked through the woods, I noticed it was oddly quiet. Like, real quiet. No birds chirping, no squirrels chittering. Just the sound of our footsteps crunching on the twigs and leaves. I figured maybe a predator was nearby and the animals were hiding. Jake and I couldn't see anything dangerous, but you never know. The woods can be unpredictable. We came around a bend and stumbled into a clearing with huge boulders covered in moss. It would have been an awesome place to climb and explore if it wasn't for the dead silence hanging over it. I glanced around nervously, feeling like I was being watched. "Let's keep moving," I said quickly. Jake nodded. As we walked back into the dense woods, a movement off to my left caught my eye. I snapped my head around, peering between the trees. Had it just been a flutter of leaves in the breeze? Or was someone there? My heart started thumping faster. I couldn't see anyone, but I couldn't shake the creepy feeling that we were not alone. We looped back around to our campsite and decided to take the canoe out for a paddle around the lake. I felt better once we were out on the open water where nothing could be lurking behind the trees. By now, it was late afternoon. The sky darkened earlier under the forest canopy. Jake dozed off in the canoe as I paddled us slowly along the shoreline. The surface of the lake looked like glass, it was so still. The paddles made ripples that faded into the distance. As we rounded a wooded point jutting out into the lake, I glimpsed something that made my breath catch in my throat. I stopped paddling, letting the canoe glide forward on momentum alone. Craning my neck, I stared hard between the trees, looking for it again. There, a flash of white standing behind one of the trunks. My eyes focused on the pale figure trying to blend in with the birch trees, facing our direction. I blinked hard, wishing it to disappear. Was it just a white rock, maybe? No, it was too tall and narrow, shaped like a person. My hands trembling, I started paddling quickly to get us away. The white figure stood motionless, half hidden, watching us the whole time. "Jake! Jake!" I hissed, kicking his foot. He startled awake. "We gotta get out of here!" "Huh? What's going on?" he mumbled, sitting up and looking around. "There's someone on shore watching us. Paddle." I didn't look back again until we were around the bend and out of sight. Jake thought I imagined it, but I know what I saw, and it terrified me. We got back to our campsite just as the last light faded from the sky. Neither of us wanted to talk about the figure as we ate dinner by the campfire, but I could tell Jake was creeped out too, from the way he kept peering into the black woods surrounding us. Eventually, we retreated into the tent to go to sleep. But of course, I couldn't sleep. Every little sound made me jump. The cry of an owl, the snapping of a branch in the flames. Jake's steady breathing let me know he had managed to fall asleep. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours, listening hard for any sound out of the ordinary. Suddenly, the cry of a loon pierced the night, making me bolt upright. Jake jerked awake too. "What was that? Is someone out there?" he whispered fearfully. We sat frozen, backs pressed against each other, staring wide-eyed into the darkness of the tent. After a minute, I lay back down, feeling ridiculous that a bird call spooked me. "It was just a loon, go back to sleep," I whispered. Jake relaxed and was soon snoring again. I finally felt myself drifting off. My limbs grew heavy and my thoughts fuzzy. I was on the edge of sleep when the sound of a snapping branch right outside the tent jerked me awake again. This was no bird call. Someone was definitely out there circling our campsite. I shook Jake urgently. He sat up, alert and tense. We listened as more twigs cracked under slow, heavy footsteps. There was more than one of them. My mind raced, thinking of what to do. We were trapped. They had surrounded the tent. There was no running. Hiding seemed useless. Should we try to confront them? But who knew how many were out there or what weapons they had? Before we could react, a gruff voice called out, "Come on out, boys, we just want to talk." I glanced at Jake and mouthed, "No way." He nodded urgently and put a finger to his lips. We huddled there in terrified silence, praying they would think we were asleep and just go away. But the footsteps kept prowling around outside. My eyes had adjusted to make out vague shadows inside the dark tent. I could see Jake holding something. He pressed it into my shaking hands, the hatchet we used to chop firewood. At least we had something to defend ourselves now. Jake crept over to the front of the tent and slowly unzipped the flap a few inches so he could peek out. A flashlight beam suddenly blinded us, pointed directly at our tent. "We know you're awake. Get on out here," the man barked. Jake quickly zipped the flap back up. It was time to fight. We'd rather go down swinging than be dragged out and go through who knows what. Jake held up 3 fingers and mouthed, "On 3." I tightened my grip on the hatchet and nodded, willing my hands to stop shaking. Jake put his hand on the zipper and ticked his fingers down. 1, 2. Just then a blaring noise cut through the air, making us both cry out in alarm. The harsh sound of a megaphone shattered the heavy silence. "This is the park rangers. Come out of your tent slowly with your hands up." Wait, the park rangers? Relief flooded through me so fast that I got dizzy. We unzipped the flap and crawled out, squinting against the blinding flashlights. 3 rangers stood around our campsite with stern looks. "Trouble with some vandals making trouble in the park," one ranger explained. "We're patrolling all the campsites and ordering folks to shelter in their cars till morning." Jake and I glanced at each other as the adrenaline rush wore off. We weren't being attacked. We were being protected. But I still can't help wondering about that pale figure watching us from the trees. Who were they? And what would they have done if the rangers hadn't shown up when they did? I don't think I want to know.